Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those of you still on the fence, I want to welcome you back to Derailed with Arcaicskidz. I am Arcaicskidz. Today, we have Ken Madden. Now, I met Ken Madden 120 years ago on Twitter. My bad. Oops, my bad. Ken's an artist, a musician, a sculptor, a product designer. He's from the great communist Twin Cities of Minnesota. Ken, how you doing, man?
Good. Just sitting here freezing, just north of Minneapolis. No place. We're it's a crazy year we've had here. I can tell you.
And it's gonna get worse.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a new strain. So this is a whole new reason to continue this madness for another, as far as we can go into the future.
Oh, I mean, whenever. Anyway, Ken, tell people who you are, what you're about, where you come from. Tell them your history.
Sure. So I'm Ken Madden, like you said. I'm an artist, and I grew up in Massachusetts and moved out here to Minnesota. Went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Got a degree in product design, and actually started working, painting, airbrushing custom bikes, and doing stuff like that. And from building custom motorcycles and custom cars, it worked into designing the actual motorcycles for production. And I ended up working for Norton Motorcycles. Was an old brand, and they tried to revive them in the late 90s, early 2000s. I worked for them for a while, and then that morphed into Viper Motorcycles, which then morphed into working at one of the largest aftermarket companies called Kuryakin that makes parts for all kinds of bikes. And then I left there in 2014 like a crazy person, and started my own company with 4 other guys. So I'm part of it's a team. It's not my own company, but it's a team of us. Started our own company called Zero, and we do motorcycle parts and accessories. And I design parts there and do the graphic design and a lot of that kind of stuff, much of the photography. So that's a little bit of my work life. My personal life, art world, is Mad K Studio, and that's where I just do crazy shit. So I like tikis, I like cars and motorcycles and all that stuff. So I kind of blend it all together and do, kind of see behind me pictures of cars and things that I've done, paintings. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get going on again, to use as my retirement. 52 years old, and I can see retirement at some point in the future, and at least from a regular day job. But I don't ever want to stop working, because I figure you just die when you stop working. So I'm trying to build up my art business in any way I can. So I appreciate you having me on to talk about basically anything. And I've been I got involved in political things after Obamacare got passed in 2009. I had spent many years watching Fox News and listening to Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, and there's a point to this. And so that was my sphere of influence. I hadn't, being from Boston, you think I might have read the Constitution once or twice. Nope.
Maybe.
Yeah. Nope. No. Paul Revere made the fence that was in the graveyard in the town I grew up in. I mean, it's like,
no reason to read that document.
I should know these things. I didn't. But anyway, so I'm going to call my local congressperson, and I'm going to yell at her. So that's what I did. And it turns out that her name was Peggy Scott. She's a Republican from a state senator or state House Representatives. And she talked to me for about a half an hour on the phone, which impressed me. I was like, well, wait a minute. You're talking to me, not just talking down.
I can't get my state legislature on the phone.
Right. And I explained to her, my daughter at the time was in high school, and she was into government. She had a government class, and she was asking questions about Obamacare because everyone was talking about it. This got forced through. This was like, Christmas break 2009. So it was fresh.
Yeah, they changed rules and everything to get that thing jammed.
Yeah. And I didn't understand.
And not to remember, if we want to know what's in it, we have to pass it.
You have to pass it to know what's in it. Thank you, Nebraska. And thank you, who? Al Franken. From Minnesota. But so then she goes, you know what? Look, I'd love to meet with you and explain to you what's going on. And, she had to explain to me that she has nothing to do with what's going on in Washington. I was that kind of ignorant, I'm like, okay, well, I know that.
Didn't understand the difference between state and federal.
Well, I didn't understand that there was no connection at all. I mean, it's completely separate. Right. Separation of powers goes from
your state legislature can't get your federal congressperson on the phone either.
Right, exactly. So she said, I'll come over. So the next night she came over for 2.5 hours, brought some bills, brought actual legislation that they were working on in the State House, and said, this is what we do. This is what I do. And she asked me if I'd known about, then, she said the recruiting side of her came out of these people are interesting, which is good. I think that's what you need to do. I don't fault her for that. In fact, I thank Peggy Scott from Minnesota for getting me involved and getting me so fired up about this stuff, because I didn't know what a caucus was. We're a caucus state, which for those of you that don't understand what caucus state is, it means that and it's honestly probably the best way of developing government out of all of the terrible ways. This is the least terrible. So like every 2 years, your neighborhood gets together at the high school and picks local leaders, like a precinct leader, an area leader, a town leader, and that gets into a little Senate district called the BPOU.
Libertarians should understand this because there's like 1,900 caucuses in the Libertarian Party.
Yes. But this one in Minnesota really worked well. And, so I went from not knowing what it was to 2 years later running them, running caucus night at our local thing.
So you jumped in both feet.
Oh man, I was in, and well, this is the other thing I didn't realize. I didn't think anyone wanted to hear anything I had to say. When I started getting involved, I realized how fast you can move up the involvement ladder. And within like 3-4 months of working and going door knocking with them and helping them put, I sat there. You guys are all gonna laugh at me on this one. I went to one time where I went to a warehouse where we were painting signs for a political rally that Michelle Bachmann was the keynote speaker. And so I walk into this room thinking I'm going to help paint 3 or 4 signs. I didn't realize it was a factory. And now they all do it. I mean, it's a sign factory. So I'm like, well, no wonder all the signs all have the same kind of handwriting and crappy paint on them. I'm like, I must have done 100 of them that day. Yeah. But, you start to realize these things and they just start build up in the back of your head. And as I got more and more involved, I started getting involved with the BPOU, which was the basic political operating unit, is what they call it in Minnesota. And that's the local Senate district. So state senators and House representatives get endorsed. This is how, when you hear the endorsement of this person, that's how it does.
Yeah.
The Libertarian Party does the same thing here. So does the Democrat Party. So I think that's a good thing. In 2016, that was the Trump year. I wasn't a Trump guy. I was a Rand Paul guy, hard. And when Rand Paul wasn't able to do it, Austin Peterson was a lot more my flavor. But I ended up in the Republican running the caucus that night. And, we were expecting on a normal year, we'd get, 20 people in our room to show up. And we figured it was a big year in 2016. So we'd get like 40, we got 130 people in my one. It was a schoolroom. It was like this. And I watched the Republican Party squander the biggest night they've had in 100 years and squander it and said, you know what? That was really hard on people. And it was so maybe we should do a primary. Yeah. So all of us grassroots people, all the Ron Paul people from Minnesota that almost turned everything over, we turned Minnesota over. We went to Washington for Ron Paul. I wasn't a Ron Paul guy at the time. I didn't understand what was happening. Right. But as after 2016, my whole mindset changed. And that's when I started listening to Chris Ann Hall. Are you familiar with Chris Ann Hall?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So she's got a great presentation on. I started on the Constitution about the 5 documents that got to the Constitution, the history, and the history of it's really great to know. No one cares about it, but I'm a geek, so I'm listening to it, and if I know that stuff, it's nice to have when you need it. But I don't lead with that. But she was interviewed by Jason Stapleton in like 2015 or so, or 2016.
Shout out to Jason Stapleton. Everyone,
shout out.
Subscribe to his stuff.
Yeah, I'm on his network. He has something called the 9-Figure Network, and I joined that the second I could, and it's been incredible. Great group of people. In fact, just before I was here, I was talking about coming on this show, and so after this is done and I can share this, I'm sure you'll gain some more people following you and stuff. Because
I really appreciate that.
You're our people. The shows I've listened to of yours, it's you got a good thing going here.
I do my best.
And by the way, I know a guy that can fill those frames with art behind you.
Yeah, there's a woman that would be very upset.
I'm sure. They're very they're actually very beautiful laid out.
I'm sure I have some frames. And we're going to interject here right quick. I've got Ken's website down there, madkstudio.com. It's running on that banner. It's also in the description below on YouTube. Click on that, buy something from this guy. We got to get some art. We got to get some culture running in the Libertarian Party. That's so important. This idea that we're just going to be able to just be intellectual is, well, for lack of a better term, retarded. So All right, Ken, we're going to shift gears for a minute, and we are going to talk about your art. You're an artist, you're a musician, you're a sculptor, you got everything, you got all this stuff going on. You were telling me in pre-show that you went to art school in the 80s and decided you weren't liberal, then you decided you weren't Republican. So one of the biggest things that I've noticed is, especially on the Democratic side of any political party, they basically have the culture, man. They've got the arts, they've got all of that stuff. How do we as libertarians turn that thing? What can the party do to make this work better and get that culture out there? Make people understand you can be funny, you can be an artist, you can be all those things and still love freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I think what a lot of people do when they get activist minded is they take their creative talents and just purely be activists with it. And that's like going to a right-wing church and talking about the Constitution. Everyone in that room will be riveted. You haven't taught anybody anything. So yeah, I have to.
They're like, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that's good. That's good to know. But you know, I remember when I was in art school, I went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and there was with any artists and creative people, there's a diversity of living styles, and so you had you know, it was a diverse school too. I mean, racially and everything. It was really a great experience. It was a really a good school. I got a lot out of it. But some of the things that I did notice, being pretty liberal guy from Massachusetts, there is when there was art shows that had a kind of a theme to them, like the LGBT group at the time, it was just LGBT group would put on an art show. There was some incredibly talented painters and sculptors in this group that would do these beautiful works of art by a person that happened to be gay. Right. And then there was the other people that weren't that great that would do and I'm not being prude, I'm just gonna say they were vile works of art. You know, like they had you know, cowboys doing stuff to each other. You know, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. You know, live your life. But you know, and they had one guy had they made a coat rack in this beautifully hand blown glass, but they were all dildos. You know, so now you've got all the parents of the students coming to school for this art show, and the guys that were and the girls that were making these amazing sculptures and these beautiful works of art were completely overlooked by the people that were doing shock art,
by this bombastic thing.
Yes, and that was across the board. And so, me being maybe a bit of a jerk, I was in industrial design, which tend to be a little bit more critical thinking on stuff. So I drew cars, and a lot of them didn't like cars because they're bad for the environment. And I had an old 71 Cutlass in art school with glass packs and hot rod, and did burnouts. And you know,
we're going to get to cars. But.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about that. But so I would draw cars a lot. You know, it's one of the things I do. I still do. It's what we talked about.
Yeah.
And I had another friend of mine that was like, he wanted to go into comic book arts, and he drew the big muscular, like superhero buff dudes really, really well. And I didn't have that talent. And another friend of mine drew like pinup girls beautifully. So we said, we got together, and we might've had a bottle of wild turkey in a bag of weed. and we said, we should do something. We should do something about this show with all their gross stuff. So I drew a 70 Charger with a big supercharger coming out of the hood, burning tires in the back. And then behind the kind of straddling the motor behind it was this girl that was really just with a dumb look on her face and kind of, you know, the pinup girl looking thing. And with his arm around her, standing next to us was this giant hulking guy, you know, holding a Tech 9, shooting in the air. And the license plate on it said Idealism. And we went into the copy room and made like 1,000 copies and put them everywhere in the show.
Oh, that is
broke into the school, and we surrounded all the artwork that was weird with idealism and stuff. Oh, they went nuts. We almost got thrown out of school for that. But I'm like, you know, back then you could do that as a protest, and they'd say, hey, if you're going to put this kind of stuff out and someone does something that's not, because we weren't destructive, you know, that was the thing. We didn't deface anyone's art. I would never do that. And I will, all of that art that I didn't like, I'll fight for their rights to do that. I will absolutely stand right next to them. Is
absolutely what you should do.
But at the same time, we're going to have a little fun with it.
Yeah.
So going through that, I start, you know, it started to click in my head that maybe everything I thought is not exactly so.
Right.
You know, maybe these people are just trying to shock people, and they're not trying to actually change the mind. And I remember talking to some of the artists that were the guys that were really trying to, you know, to bring their art, and, you know, their parents, and you've got people that are, you know, in their early 20s, and they've only recently come out, and this is in the 80s and early 90s. It's not like it was today as acceptable.
This
and
is
then
back when you can get AIDS from a toilet seat and all that.
Oh yeah, AIDS thing was going through our school like crazy. We had 2 people die, and it was anyway. It was a bad deal. It was a bad deal, and here you got all these people making it 10 times worse, because now all these parents, all the people from the community and stuff that want to come in and see this great art show of LGBT artists, which I think it's a great thing to do, is to have some segmented things like that. You know, you could have an Irish art show. I'd show up. You know,
right? I mean, whatever.
But you know,
leprechauns.
So like this, and this is what I see with the Libertarian Party too. And this is, I'll tie it together, is that's what I see. They always want to go to the furthest radical point, then find the connection point and say, okay, we can move out from there.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Libertarians. The Democrats do it. They all do it if they're trying to get new people. Yeah. But if you look at marketing and advertising, you never do that. You know, go read some good ad copy from anything, and it never has that.
The ad copy is, you're going to reach out to anyone, to the lowest common denominator, to say it, I mean, bluntly, you're going to reach for the bottom fruit first. You climb the tree as you go.
Right.
You know?
So, you know, I think building culture, music, I think, is huge. And, you know, I've been playing music for a long time. My dad was a musician, started playing professionally in 1947, and he's 90 years old. He still plays. I mean, he's down in Arizona, retired, awesome. And he had a funny thing. So, you know, again, a cultural thing. This is something that my father put together, and they're unfortunately kind of MSNBC watchers, but, you know, they're incredible people. And so he's down in just outside of Scottsdale. And a lot of what happens down, there's a lot of band directors from the Midwest retire and they go down there. Well, he was an old band director. That's one of the things he did too, just to raise us 5 kids. And so he's got this community concert band full of a bunch of old band directors that they play music that he's written and stuff like that. So I guess they're like amazing, you know, because it's all like awesome. real musicians. So, but again, that's that, and it's bringing people from all walks and light, and bringing them all together and you know, find that neutral ground, find the middle ground. And the Libertarian Party has it. I mean, man, my God, they have it in spades of just all of the good ideas are right there.
Right. You know? Like I always say, we have all the best ideas and we have the absolute worst marketing.
Right. You know, exactly. I mean, you had, I remember watching the debate with, I'm really bad with names, but it was Austin Peterson and the guy that ended up being, he was the governor of, what was it? You know, he was the last one that they ran in 2016.
From shit. I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name right now. So professional wrestler, Jesse Ventura.
No, not Jesse Ventura. It was
was it my governor?
Yeah, your governor
from New Mexico.
Yeah, from New Mexico. Yeah. What's his name? I know everyone's gonna laugh at me like he's not libertarian. Well, I'm not. Well, laugh all you want.
Well, I'm brain dead right now too, and I can't think of his name.
And it's been a long day.
They ran him for president in 2016 as well.
Yeah, and then the dude from
Gary Johnson.
Johnson. So then him, and they had the guy from the computer guy. And I remember watching the debate between the 3 of them, and I'm like, this is McAfee. This is a Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah.
You know, here's Austin Peterson absolutely killing it with good idea. I mean, the guy comes out and says, I want to live in a country where the gay couple can can protect their weed fields with automatic weapons. I'm like, you got my vote. You got my vote.
We're done, man. We're done.
You know, and Gary Johnson comes out there and just fumbles his way through anything. I've never liked him. I mean, I'm sure he's a good human being, but he was
a great governor. I got to say, New Mexico during his 2 terms really saw a lot of growth. It was definitely going in the right direction. And it's been a shit show going downhill ever since. But then I don't know what the hell happened. Yeah, I think he stopped smoking pot and it ruined him. I think that's
that might be. And then Governor Weld, you know, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm like, what? You know,
Raytheon executive? What?
Yeah, I said I don't I don't get this Libertarian Party. And I look
I
into
don't
them.
like the guy that sold missiles to blow up brown children to the U.S. government running as a libertarian. I just don't.
Probably not
It
the way
just
to
doesn't
go.
work for me in my head.
Well, and there you go. There's another turnaround. So, I was in college during the first Gulf War, and man, I had, like I said, my generation didn't really have to go through much. I was born in '68. By 1990, I never knew about Vietnam. That just is something that happened. What did we have?
2001, it was like all rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah, when we had the shuttle blew up, that was our biggest thing. I remember standing in class and
one eye blew that way, one blew that way.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, this is crazy. I can't imagine, what Pearl Harbor was like seeing that shit. So then the Gulf War broke out and CNN was on, and I was an RA, so I had I'd cable and TV, so we'd just sit there and drink beer and watch the war. Yeah. And it was like the most exciting video game ever. And we're like, this is awesome.
And so I think that's the worst thing that ever happened to America was
I became
live stream more.
I became super hawkish. I mean, just like, let's go get them. You know? And then we had 10 years of whatever. And when the towers
there was war going on the entire 10 years. You just didn't hear about it.
I didn't hear about it. I was busy working, partying, playing in a blues band. Yeah.
That and the news media didn't want to talk. I mean, because then they were just out there dropping bombs on little brown people. Right. It wasn't like tank battles and stuff. It wasn't anything to be,
Yeah, that's what changed that's really the 90s is what changed the focus of the military of just, we can do these little pinpoint things and no one will even know about it. And it won't affect
so anything. Until 9/11, there was like war wasn't, it wasn't good for ratings anymore.
Right.
Then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden, holy hell.
Well, it was, and I was, my wife was pregnant with my son, and my daughter was 6 years old, and I was just, working from home, and trying to have my own business, and I painted goalie masks for a while. So you see like the goalies in NHL hockey, and they get the painted masks. Yeah, I did that for a while. For 2-3 years.
Oh, they got some of the coolest masks in all in sports.
Dude, that was a fun job. It was a factory. I mean, it was just me and the other guy. But I mean, by factory, it was just like
it was just one after another,
one or two a day, and there's a cabinet with 40 of them in line. It's just you never get finished, but it refined. So I'll use that as another metaphor for what we can do to try and move the ball forward. You got to just keep doing things. You got to keep at it, because when I started that, I went into that goalie mask. I had stuff in magazines, and I'd won awards and stuff like that. The first mask I sat down and painted for this guy, he comes over and looks at it. And he's like, "Yeah, that's no, I see what you're doing there." Yeah, and he dips the rag in thinner and wipes the whole thing off and says, "Yeah, it's just not my style that you need to do. So it needs to be better." I was like, "What the?" So I did it again, and it was better. And I looked at it and I'm like, holy shit, the guy I was pissed at him, but I'm like, I needed money, and I'm like, he's not wrong. This looks better when I did it like this. So over the next year of doing that every day, not getting it wiped off every day, but you get good after that, after a couple of years of doing it. And it was the same thing when I would do door knocking and stuff with people. I wasn't going to the door and shouting this and that about the this is what's happening in the state, and aren't you afraid of that? I'd go to the door and say something like, "Hey, who made that bench out front? That looks like homemade. Did you guys do that?" Or, "Hey, is that a Mustang? Is that a Mustang? God, I had one of those."
You got to get them engaged.
And then say, "Here, check this out." And those people would vote, and they'd come out to meetings and stuff, people had never done it before. It's not hard to do. It's just, you have to kind of tone back the passion a little bit, I guess, and have the knowledge, have the facts and figures, because without them, you're not going to keep people, but you're not going to get anybody.
You got to have the facts and figures, but that's not what you hit them with.
Right. Exactly.
You got to engage them. You got to entertain them. That's one of the things that I wanted to do with this show was, and my wife actually was the one that pointed it out. She said, there's a bunch of shows that you watch that they're super serious people, and they talk facts and figures. But you make jokes and goof off, and that needs to be your lane. That's something that you do. It's just who you are, and that's where you're going to be better at it. And so that also becomes a problem getting guests sometimes because they're like, I watched your show and I ain't going on that shit.
Yeah. Well, that's what you told me. Cause I mean, I'll tell everyone, we've known each other on Twitter for a little bit while, but I had never listened to a show until he's like, hey, want to be on? I'm like, sure, why not? You know? and I'm like, I'm driving home and I have an hour drive because I'm stupid. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna listen to whatever the last show he did. And I listened to it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I really enjoyed it. I said, this is gonna be fun. Because for a while I was thinking after I talked to you this afternoon, I was going, what did I get myself into? What if this really sucks? But it doesn't. I think you got a good thing going here, and I think you've got an excellent way of presenting what you want to do, and I think you're on the right path as far as let's have some fun with this shit. It doesn't have to all be serious and gloom.
Well, I appreciate that, and part of the intent is that you can have a serious conversation where people think about it after the fact and go, "Man, that was funny," and then, "Oh yeah, by the way, like the debt is too high or whatever." I don't know. It depends on whatever the hell you talk about. Because, like I said, the name of the show is Derailed. We're never on target. We always get just screwed up, and we just do whatever the hell comes to mind. But we will try to target right quick. So. Let's see, shit, I just lost my train of thought. You talk now.
Oh well, this whole COVID thing this last year, and the amount of, I bought this mic, I bought a whole bunch of stuff so I could set up. I ended up working at home for 5 months, which was actually heaven on earth. And yeah, I think that a lot of people, the paradigm's changing, and right now is the time for the libertarian mindset. And I'll say small libertarian, small L. I think it's really exploding, and now is the time that the party could really, if they're smart about it, and like you said, if you get some guys in there, they're good marketing ad guys, to be able to pull people like me in.
Yeah.
I don't.
We need the Tea Party Republicans that feel like the Republican Party has screwed them.
Yeah.
And because like you said, because I would consider them small L. Mm-hmm. But you got to reach out and get it. And why? Okay, let me ask you this. Why didn't the Libertarian Party in March of last year, when they say, we're going to have 15 days to slow the spread, start screaming to the rafters?
That's what I thought too. I was like, oh, this is their time. This is going to be great. And it was just crickets.
It's just recently they start. Okay, I will give Spike Cohen credit. He did. As a VP candidate, he did try to put on rallies. He did scream to the high heavens.
I did hear something about that.
This crap is, you cannot have this going on. What are you people doing? Mm-hmm. But that's not what the Libertarian Party was doing. Right, they were too busy talking about, cops hunting down black men, which is not true. I mean, they hunt down Americans in general, but
Well, I'm in Minneapolis, so you want to talk about?
Yeah, all about hunting down black people.
Last summer we had the Black Lives Matter socialist terrorist group.
Wow, he just went there. I like it.
Yeah, I'll do that because they are they're terrible. They all started here with their marches and things like that. And
they started in Ferguson.
I'm in
2016.
Right. But they started really catching on with on the press and stuff with a lot of things they were doing here because they were marching to our state fair, and it got to be a big deal. Yeah. And I'm in a mixed racial marriage. I have no.
That means you're a racist. I saw it on Twitter the other day.
Yeah, that's right. That is the reason, because I feel bad for some. I don't know. I don't care. The race doesn't matter to me. I like people, or they're an asshole.
Right. Yeah. There's only one up or down.
But the Live Black Lives Matter group really had an opportunity to unite, and they rather punish. And so when I see that, it's changed. And so most groups turn that way. And the Tea Party kind of went that way too, where it was like, it went from in the beginning when I started getting involved in 2009, 10, 11, 12, it was everybody. There was all walks of life were in there, mm-hmm. and political parties and religions. And it was just, but it turned into a Republican right-wing Christian nightmare. And I'm a Christian. I mean, pretty hard, I don't make any excuses for it. And a lot of the reason I find Christianity in 2011 is when I was not raised in or nothing. I won't go into a long biblical thing, but when I discovered it, I was like, wow, this is a whole new thing. I never knew what the Bible. I mean, I knew we had a Bible at the house and had cool pictures in it, especially in the end in the Revelation. But it was a really cool gold.
Yeah, all the best art is always in Revelation.
Oh yeah, there was one of those Bibles with the gold.
Like, this is where you all die.
Yeah, the gold side and there's dragons and there's things and everything's coming and it's like pain and people being ripped apart. I'm like, this is awesome. I never read a word of it. I was just like, look at all the pictures. You know,
good. It's just depressing.
Genesis wasn't so good. It was like, oh, it's just like good. There's the earth. So what? Look at the dragon. Yeah. He's got like a guy in his mouth and there's lightning shooting out of his hand. But
I get that.
Yeah, you get that. But the religious right in these groups,
they're awful. They're the original cancel culture.
They're equally as hateful as what I see Black Lives Matter being. So I'm not pointing fingers at right or left. I'm saying no, any of these extremists are out of their mind. Yeah. And what they need to do is just sit down, they all need to go lay by their dish and let people that are just want to have a conversation, have the conversation, sit to the side, be radical. We're going to need radicals,
right?
But listen to an actual conversation about, if you want to talk about, hey, I'll give you where I stand on everything. Guns. They should tomorrow repeal every gun law that's ever been. If I want a tank,
oh, thank you.
If you want to own a tank, you should own a tank. Now, if you want to regulate the tracks on the tank so they don't tear up the roads, so they have to have rubber, or you can only run it in certain places, that makes sense. I
can accept that.
That's called sensible. But I'm going to have my tank.
Yeah.
What people go.
If I want a nuclear silo in my backyard, I'm just saying.
Right. And so when it comes down to how many rounds I can have in my shotgun, are you kidding me? and so
as many as you want, as long as you're not going to duck hunt.
Right. And when I listened to your show before, so a lot of the guns that I might have had at one time that fell in the lake, they
wasn't that a bitch when that happened to you?
Oh, it's the worst thing in the world, I tell you. I felt terrible. But
I never actually had. I was hypothetically, if I ever had them.
Right. Well, I'll say I do have them, and now you're going to get shut down. It's a come and take a minute. But I know that I've talked to people in the military. I've talked about the gun thing, and that's big right now. And this I actually didn't know much about the what they're trying to do because I've been really busy trying to build a business until I listened to your show today. So I actually learned a lot from your show about this, and now I'm all fired up. So thanks.
Well, that's not what I'm there for, but okay, I appreciate you listening.
But anyway, we went on a tangent.
Derailed, baby, derailed. That's what we do.
Derailed. Well, I can help you with that. It's, squirrel. Hey, look,
squirrel. Woo!
But the what's happening in the country, like I said, I think this is a great opportunity for people that are very liberty minded to gather together on shows like this and share. I appreciated you shared one of my posts that I said, share artists. And getting back to what I'm saying, I mean, the post that I put up there was a recent commission I did of a 1965 Ford Falcon station wagon.
Which is a super sick car, by the way.
It was a cool car, wasn't it?
And that was a great, great piece of art as well.
Well, thank you very much. I actually worked my way through art school, going to car shows and drawing people's cars.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
And would get ridiculed for it because I wasn't.
That's back when you could work your way through college.
Yeah. Well, true. I mean, that all right. So here we go. Here goes the next one. So 1987, my first semester there was $6,100. And it was one of the top 10. It was one of the top art schools in the country. It still is. And I'll brag about that. You don't go to art school. It's not worth it. But because the same school,
I loved it. Don't go.
$48,000 a year for the same school to get a degree in art. Now, yes, you can do it, but most of the people, like my starting,
you're going to be on Social Security, still paying back your loans,
right? And what are you going to do? A career in art is very difficult. I've kept in there, but I was dead ass broke for years. I mean, 1995, when my daughter was born, I think I made $8,000 that year. And I mean, you barely live on that. Yeah, I mean, I was living off of nothing.
I have never made $8,000 from the time I started working when I was 16. I've never made such little money.
It was year after year. I mean, the next year I made like 10 or 11 or 12, and then I had roommates and I ate like crap.
You would have to have roommates and eat top ramen.
Yeah, and you know, at the same time, we weren't married and we weren't even together. My wife and I joked that we got the divorce out of the way first. Our daughter was 5 at our wedding.
She's like, I can't have kids with him.
Yeah,
He's 4.
but so for 4 years we hated each other. She was on welfare, lives in Section 8 housing. They're coming after me. You know, the first thing they say to me is like, okay, you're, you know, deadbeat dad. You start out $2,500 in the hole, and then they take your money every month. Yeah. So what incentive did I have to get a new job? And I was an honest guy. I was like, I never took any of it. But you know, at one point I did get a job, and I went to the county and I said, you know, I'm going to start working at this place regular and making more money and stuff like that. It was like a 11 or 12 bucks an hour job. And the lady actually says to me, she looks me straight in the eye and says, we review every 5 years. Most people just don't tell us. So you don't worry about that. And I'm like,
that would be ridiculous.
I'm like, well, first of all, this whole system is wrong. When her and I tried to get back together sometimes, because we had a little girl, you know, a little baby. And when we tried to make it work, like there was a time where we had a house offered to us. The guy was moving up north. And he's like, hey, I just need someone to watch the house for a year. You guys can just be, you know, live there for free, whatever. And when she went to change her address or something, the county said, well, oh, you're going to be living together? Oh, he's working. Again, you know, this was, you know, $9-10 an hour job.
He has a job, benefits.
All of them cut off completely. Yeah. And it's like, oh,
well,
how do you get ahead?
Republicans aren't wrong when they push that the state incentivizes single mothers. They're not wrong about that.
No, they're absolutely right about it. They do. But they also
push it, as opposed to pushing y'all work it out, do better, because a strong family unit is going to make for a stronger society.
And I'll tell you, both of those are the wrong approaches. The approach that has to be taken isn't, the left goes, oh, you poor thing, we can help you. That's the approach that needs to be looked at and go, okay, how do we fight that? Well, you fight that with going, oh, you poor thing, these people have been keeping you down. We think so much more of you. There's ways that we can help. We can help wean you off of this system that's keeping you down. But we need your help with it. And then we can help you. You know, and it's a matter of giving people the self-respect
that help themselves.
Their self-respect and the esteem to lift themselves up. And, you know, in a situation like ours, like if they had said, I mean, they drove the family apart. Yeah. You know, I'm not saying
that's their intent.
Yeah, it is. And I was a jerk. I'll admit I was a jerk. I was drinking too much. And she, you know, she had her issues too. And we had a little baby. So, you know, years later, it was great because I got to go to the county and said, hey, we're getting married.
I'm back.
The stoplight stopped working in the town and everything flickered and there was like smoke coming out of computer. They didn't know what to do. That never happens.
They're like, what?
You know, she got off welfare and I married her. Then so we got married. I got a better job. I finally started making some, you know, decent money, you know, $40,000 a year, not a lot, but decent. And this was in, you know, 2001. And we went to buy a house.
Just for you youngins out there, 40,000 in 2001 is like 150 grand now.
No,
just kidding.
I wish. Well,
just kidding.
And so we decided that we didn't want to put our kids in daycare. So she was a stay-at-home mom. You want to talk about something hard? That's a hard gig. Rough. And it's hard on you too because you have to. There's no excuses. There's no sick days. There's no. Yeah. So it was always side hacks and side hustles and working, but. One of the things that happened, and I'll tell you about, you know, evils of the state and the welfare system that people don't talk about. So we got married. We did everything right. Okay. She took a loan and got through school and got a degree or associate's degree in graphic design and started working. I mean, there's some good to those systems. I don't agree with them, but there's some good to it if a person does it, if you don't punish them. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we got there. I owed a bunch of money still. And so I called the state and I'm like, all right, I can pay you, you know, the $4,000 or $5,000 that I'd saved up to pay them for my back arrears, even though we were getting married.
Right.
And they're like, okay. So I go down to the city hall or the state house and pay it and get my receipt and everything like that. They kept that on my record for I wouldn't be able to get good credit or nothing until I think even 2016 was the last time that it came up to. So for for 15 years. That was on my credit.
Seriously?
It was completely paid off. It was done. And this is a true story. This is the kind of crap that happens that you don't hear about it because, I didn't go raise a stink about it. Cause I'm like, just whatever.
Well, I think a lot of people don't. Well, first of all, I think there's actually two reasons you don't hear about it. Is one, if you were to raise a stink, people would be like, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they just wouldn't care. Like,
Exactly.
poor you. You know what I mean? I think that's a lot of it. And then also, I think it's because anytime you complain about the state mistreating you or mistreating your situation, no one gives a damn.
No, they don't.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They just don't care. And I think it comes down to, well, it never happened to me. But it can.
Very easily.
You have no idea.
Quickly.
One of the things that I bring up all the time is if you get a parking ticket and you forget about it, your problems are only getting worse.
Yeah.
Because it won't be very long. You get pulled over. Maybe you're a little tough on the throttle or something like that, whatever. And all of a sudden, your license is suspended. Welcome to jail.
Yeah.
Welcome to, now you need to hire an attorney. Now you got all the shit. Now it's going to cost you $8,000 because you parked in the wrong spot for 10 extra minutes.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, you're in New Mexico, so you probably don't have the concept of the winter beater. So I
don't know what that is.
The winter beater is the car that I buy every fall and drive it through the winter in the salt and the slop and the crap. And because it
doesn't get that bad here. I grew up in Utah and I've lived in Colorado and New Mexico, but even there, it's always been southern Utah, southern Colorado. So we never needed the winter beater.
So the salt and stuff destroys cars and it just wrecks them. So anyway, I buy a $2,500 beater and drive it every winter. Right now I have a 2001 town car. But
just to beat the crap out of it?
Just to beat the crap out of it for the winter, and I drive my nice car in the summer. But
nice.
So a couple of years ago, 2019, I had a Ford Ranger, 94 Ford Ranger with 308,000 miles on it, and I used it up for that winter. And in May, when I sold it, there was barely anything left of it. A guy bought it, and all right, that's fine. Well, he never transferred the title or did anything. So over Christmas, over Christmas break, I get this bill for like $140 and a warrant, for if I don't pay this and stuff like that. Because apparently the guy at some point just driven it down to St. Paul and got out and left.
Yeah.
So it got towed. It was parked illegally. It was during COVID, so they had extra things that you couldn't do during COVID, and it was parked in it.
Yeah.
And I had all the proof of it, but at the DMV,
they don't care. They want their money.
The DMV and the city never talk to each other, so yeah. I'm like, I had to, and they're like, well, you can
even if they did, it wouldn't matter. They're like, right. Hey,
they're like, you can mail it in and, you still have to pay. And I'm like, I'm not paying. I said, I'll come down to the offices in downtown St. Paul in this beautiful Art Deco palace that they have. And I'll give you, here's my sheet of paper that says I sold the car on this day. I went online, I filled it all out, and they checked it out. And they're like, oh yeah, that's no problem. And I'm like,
hey,
yeah, that's cool. I'm like, yeah, it only took a half a day off of work. I had to pay $9 to park to walk in here, put on a damn mask and then come in here and hand it to you. And I was the only one in the whole building except me and the cops that were frisking me.
Yeah, make sure that you don't have any weapons. Obviously.
Right. Well, so I asked the guy.
That's very important.
Yeah, I asked him. I said, "Is it okay to leave a gun in the parking lot out there?" He just looked at me. What? I'm like, "Well, I got my holster here, so when I go through the metal detectors, it's gonna beep. But there ain't no gun in it because I had to leave it out there because you had a sign.
Because you people are a bunch of commie bastards,
right? And I don't. The unfortunate part of it, I had no worries. I wasn't concerned about where I was or what I was doing. So it was one of the times if I did have worries, I would not have disarmed. But with what was going on in Minneapolis and St. Paul, man, these cops are on edge, and honest to God, I don't blame them. They're
yeah.
A lot of them, it's a tool of their own. They've created this shit soup that everyone's in right now, but it's a two-way street. And when I was in Minneapolis, it was a little crappy.
Well, it doesn't help when Republicans go squawking about like, oh, there's just a couple bad apples.
Like, I know. I hate that.
No.
Yeah. Well, there was 4 guys standing there.
There's a couple good apples. They always get fired because they call out the bad ones.
Right. So the guy, there is one guy out of the 4 there with the Chauvin thing that I feel bad for, and it's the guy that had been on the force for 4 days. 4 days.
And he was like, he even said something.
Yeah, he's like, well, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and these people are like, well, he should have made him stop. And I'm like, dude, that's not how this works.
Yeah, no, it's not.
That's like a private, telling a sergeant, hey, you should, not do that. That sergeant's going to be like, why don't you shut up?
Well, and through all that last summer, the stories you didn't hear was when the Black Lives Matter groups started threatening to come out into the suburbs where I live. And some of the suburbs are like, yes, yeah, you come on out and make your. Our suburb was like, that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah,
it just wouldn't be a good idea. And I talked to our cops in our town, and I'm like, I said, if something starts breaking out and stuff, I'm going to tell you right now. This is where I live. This is my address. I'm going to be standing on my roof with my phone, and I'll be
rooftop white Korean.
Yep, I'll stand there with my phone, and I'll be having you guys on things. But right next to me on my phone is gonna be my 45, my shotgun, and my AR.
Yeah,
and I don't ever want to have to use it. Twice I've been accosted in my life, way before you were legally able to carry, when I lived in a bad neighborhood in Minneapolis, and once I got it all the way out and pointed. The other time I just got it, pulled out of my back, and both
they just realized you had it.
They realized I had it, and they ran away.
Yeah,
and I ran the other way, just as terrified as they were. It's not a situation. People carrying guns and like, oh, I'd shoot that son of a bitch if that was. I'm like, no,
that's not how.
If you're
any
military,
responsible person doesn't think about it that way.
No, and
they
I
think
was like,
about it that like it's for my protection in the worst possible scenario.
Right.
I have it.
And I don't ever want to have.
You never want to use
that again. But you know what? Because I've been through that twice, I train, I practice.
Right.
And you just have to know things. I don't want like people who run out and buy a gun and just like, I haven't got a gun now, I'm safe. No.
I think training's important. I don't think it's mandatory, because I think the Second Amendment ends with shall not be infringed, and I think that's pretty damn clear.
Yep.
So when you said every single gun law should be immediately abolished, I agree with that, because I think every single one of them is in violation of the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
They all
the Bill of Rights. Doesn't matter. That is literally in the Constitution. It's not even the Bill of Rights we're talking about here.
Pretty clear. Penn and Teller did a great. There's a skit. Look it up on YouTube. Did you see that when he Penn and Teller?
Bullshit.
No, it was just I know the show. I know what you're talking about. This was just a little like 1 minute blurb skit that he did on YouTube.
No, I guess
and it's him.
See it.
And it's him reading the Second Amendment. He's got it written out on a thing, and they talk about the cadence of it and how it goes. And he's like, you think these guys that have been studied, these were some of the smartest guys in the world, didn't want anyone to have guns because you're fucking up the punctuation. It's
that's good times. Penn Gillette is one of the things, and I want to get your take on this, because you are an artist and musician, and we've discussed that culture, I think, is part of where we need to go. As far as libertarians go, to grow the party, basically displace. I think we actually honestly can displace half the Republican and half the Democrat Party and be the biggest party. I think that takes work and time. Obviously, it's not going to happen next year, but I think we can do it. Let's talk about culture for just a second in the regard of one of the things that I've spoke with in private and a tiny bit in public is that the DNC does that get out the vote nonsense, right? They do that thing, whatever. They put on these concerts, and the entire idea is they get young people there, come to see the bands, and then they talk to them about, are you registered to vote? And are you registered in the wrong party? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's brilliant marketing, first
great.
of all. And they're like, we're the cool party, obviously, right? And it works. And the Libertarian Party needs to do that. And we have great libertarian bands and musicians and anarchists. Now, here's the thing that people don't understand. People think that the DNC, that these bands just do this for free. They don't.
They get paid.
They're paid. Like, they're paid to be there. They really don't care.
They're paid a lot.
The check didn't bounce.
It's not even a little. It's not even a small amount.
Right? They're paid.
They're not showing up for $20,000. And that might not smell like a small, but they're showing up.
No, we're talking six figures. Yeah. Now, no offense to All That Remains or Eric July's band or whatever. But they would show up for like 30, 40 grand. Easy.
Right.
Their band would show up and do a concert, right? Now, the band needs to get paid, but the concert goer needs to be free. What are your thoughts on us doing like art shows, concerts, talks? Why can't we get Jason Stapleton to come explain to the people that knock on the doors for the Libertarian Party what marketing and sales is? Because Jason Stapleton's time is worth money, and we have to pay him. Obviously,
that, and there is a contingent that don't like him. Him and Tom Woods, they can't stand them. And you
know what? They're all gonna have to suck it.
I don't understand that. I don't understand it. I'm like, you guys, you've got to bring new people in. I'm the person that needs to be brought in. I'm an absolute activist. I'm well connected in the area. People listen to what I have to say. I'm not trying to blow my own horn. I'm just saying but you can change your game and be like, well, I was wrong about the Republicans. Be a libertarian. Well, I left the Republican.
Here's why.
I left the party completely, but I can't jump into the Libertarian Party yet. Because every time I start thinking, you know what, I'm going to go look on this, there's some press release comes out about, we really should not be a country and open borders. And I'm like, we can have that discussion. I'm up for that. But it has to be held with, we're getting rid of every sort of government welfare of any sort before I want to even consider an open border.
And gun laws.
I mean, there's so many other things.
Because if you're going to open up the border, man, I don't want any gun laws.
Right. If you want to talk about censorship and art and shutting down, you want to talk about art, I can't advertise anymore on Facebook. Yeah. And it was my main thing on Facebook. So that's part of how this all got together is I just put a post out saying, hey, if you see an artist, share it. And I put a post out and I wanted other artists to jump on there and share. And you know what? You're the only one that did. So
you're welcome.
And I'm saying thank you for that because you understood what I'm talking about. And now look at the conversation we're having. And now I can take this conversation that we're having and share it with all the people that I know, and it'll help you out and you're going to help me out. I mean, this is the way it works. And this is how we build the culture. And when you talked about Glenn Beck in a previous episode, he had some really good ideas when he started out the Blaze because he wasn't going to be political as far as pick a side, and him and Ted Cruz got to be buddy and fucked it all up as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
But
thank God you just said that because that's what I've always thought that. Like, if it wasn't for Ted Cruz, Glenn Beck might have been better.
Yeah, and this is coming from a guy. All right, full disclosure. I mean, I worked for Ted Cruz's campaign out here. I actually did an event with his dad, and we had a prayer dinner together.
Ted Cruz's campaign and not Rand Paul's.
Rand Paul was out by then. He was out. Rand Paul was out, and then Austin.
But you didn't go for the Trump?
No, I was never a Trump guy.
Can I just say that, because this is derailed, we're going to derail for 1 second, then we'll come back to your point. Yeah, squirrel.
Yeah.
I watched this press conference, the whole thing with Joe Biden today, which I don't even know that you can actually call it that, honestly. Pre-selected questions, pre-selected people, that was irritating. It made me miss the Cheeto Nazi dictator, because at least he was funny. You know what I mean?
The Trump like I tell people, he was no better or no worse than Obama. And when you say that to somebody, it doesn't matter who they are, they lose their mind. No matter who. Unless that's how you can tell if someone's
because I just think that's funny and good for you for saying that.
If you're a liberty-minded person, it makes perfect sense. There's things that he did that I thought were awesome. There's things that he did that I thought were terrible. Just, but one thing I did love, and this was purely selfishness, and it has nothing to do with liberty or what's right or wrong. I loved his Twitter. I loved watching him.
How could you not love his Twitter?
Like, watch what he does. Watch how he is absolutely violating these people into every hook that he sent out for 4 years. They just latched onto every single one of them. And, he was his own problem. He would have won by a landslide if he'd have just changed his tune a little bit, which I don't care if he did or didn't. But
I don't know if that's true.
They came after him with this pandemic and thing, and they were able to just steamroll him.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know that you're right about the Twitter thing, because one of the things that just made me just drove me insane about the Republicans, right, is, well, I mean, if Trump would just control his Twitter, and I'm like, Twitter got him elected, you idiot.
It's true.
Twitter's the reason that bombastic, narcissistic, psychotic, crazy things this man says is what made you all love him.
Right.
So why don't you just own it? You know what I mean? And just be like, no, it's funny and they deserve it because they're psychotic and we're going to fight back and that's fine. That's one of the things that just makes me crazy about Republicans. And it makes me crazy to a point with libertarians, not as bad as Republicans, is that you're in a knife fight and you're letting you're letting them use a machete and you're over here with your little 3-inch pocket knife. Dude, pull out the sword.
Yeah,
game on.
The big guns.
You gotta understand what you're doing.
And what I mean by that, he shouldn't have toned down that part of it. The part that he screwed up was the left was able to paint him as a person that didn't care people were getting sick. And he didn't, from a marketing standpoint, he didn't know enough to pull back just enough to say, hey, there's a lot bad going on here. And I mean, how he, I think he thought I think that he thought he was doing it because of, he had Fauci in there, who was a lunatic. And, and I think he thought he was, I think it's just part of the reason that a lot of people hated him is his personality quirks is he can't back off of anything. And he needed to back off of some of the
everyone's gonna hate me eventually.
Yeah, no, me too. But it's when, you know, I don't have a dog in this race, so I didn't really care. But I'm like,
me neither. But I thought it was funny.
I'm more worried about my city council because they have a hell of a lot more effect on you.
Okay, and I love that you just said that because let's talk about that. That is, oh man, that is my thing with the libertarians. And okay, I joined the Libertarian Party, like in my head at least, in 2004.
Okay.
Back when it was an email list.
Yeah.
It wasn't even really a thing. Right. You know what I mean? I mean, it was in some spots, but they were really starting to build and whatever. Until Ron Paul, it wasn't really viable, in my opinion. It wasn't a thing.
They didn't have a face.
No, Ron Paul, and strangely enough, Ron Paul ran as a Republican, and that's what made the Libertarian Party explode. He wasn't even running on their ticket, but they were like, yeah, let's latch onto this awesome guy.
Yeah.
And it blew it up, which good, you know. But these people do not seem to understand that you're not going to win the presidency, Jack Wings. You have to focus.
It's called farm team.
Get a mayor, get a city council, get a county commissioners, get sheriffs. These are places you can put your resources, put your opportunities. Why is this so hard for these morons to figure out?
Well, because they want the big prize, they don't want the work. And
you know
it's no different. It's no different.
Participation trophies caused it.
Yep, it was exactly. We had a local election here, and like I said, everything local is what's going to affect you more. Your city council, your county commissioners, and your state reps have a lot more. That doesn't matter who's president. You're going to get a tax raise or a tax cut.
Look at every city that just said no to all the lockdown shit. Every one of them is like legit big R Republicans, hard.
Yeah. So our city, our little town in Minnesota, in Ramsey, was one of the cities that a week and a half ago said, hey, we're not going to use city funds to enforce the government's unconstitutional mandate. That's all they said.
A week and a half ago? So they did it for a year? Well,
we just got a new council elected.
Okay.
And through working, there was a special election, and we got a majority in February. So, nice. You know, the first orders of business of learning what you need to do. And then, okay, so one of the things they did is they said, we're not using the city finances for this. And the mayor is kind of a leftist nut, and he's been on the city council. He's kind of the old guard that we're trying to oust. And we flipped it this year. I mean, and it was all grassroots. I made posters, our billboards, and we just hung them up a week before the election. Nice. It was brilliant. They just the people on the other side that we were running against.
You have to DM me.
No idea. I'll show them to you. Yeah, I got up because. We'll keep them on the download because I'm going to use them for some other stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. But you'll have to DM me.
But anyway, so the lady that was this lady Chelsea Howell, she's fantastic. She's I would say small L libertarian. She's really good, and she mentioned, rightfully so, that if government is able to do something bad to the public, some kind of tyrannical thing, just because the government doesn't mean it's right. And she used the example of the internment camps in in World War II.
World War II.
Yeah. So those internment camps, she says, that's what she uses the example, mandates and these unconstitutional mandates coming down, it's the same concept. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if the government's doing it. Well, this is what the left does. And our city got a big chunk of it. They found the far left Japanese Democratic voting group nationally showed them what there was said and said, we got to get you guys in here because we got to put a stop to this. And they made her out. All the major newspapers, all of the TV channels, it blew up last week, and they made her out to be this racist, Oriental hating Asian, and at the meeting, at the city hall meeting. So I found out about this. I gathered a couple lawyers together and some people that I knew and said, how can we fight this at the next city council meeting? And there's public comment. So me and a couple other people got together, and we had about 100 people at that meeting in support of what these guys did. And what they had done on the other side is they got this Japanese council person to come on, speak on like we're doing now. That was a Zoom thing. Mm-hmm. And they had a very, very elegant looking Asian man with a just put together suit, tie, the whole bit, and his microphone, and he read a statement and then introduced, this is so-and-so, and she lives in Minneapolis. And he was somewhere else in the country. This is a city council, little city meeting. Mm-hmm. And this lady was from Minneapolis and was told a horrific story when she was 6 years old, being yanked out of Los Angeles and brought to these internment camps in Utah. It's a horrible thing, Yeah,
and for sure it is.
And so, heartstrings. At the end of it, there was a few more speakers.
And that's what they do, baby. They're playing emotion.
So, but this is how we fight it. So the heartstrings were pulled. By the time I got up there, there'd been a few other speakers in favor of what they did and a few against what they did. And I got up and I said, look at this. This is the thing. And this is a true story. I've got a condition where if I wear a mask, like these cotton masks, if sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes a half an hour, but I'll pass out. I get really dizzy. It's like vertigo, and I'll just pass out.
For real?
So yeah, no, it's crazy.
Woo!
So, and my wife has anxiety, and the everyone looks like this.
It's being closed up like that.
Closed up. It's really difficult for her. And I went up there and I said, here's the two situations of the minorities here. And I said, I'm following the science. Let me tell you about some science. And I looked back at the kid that just spoke that said he was following the science, and Dr. Fauci. I said, he's following political science. I'm following actual science. And I said, but it is nice to see youth here. I said, thank you for coming and speaking, because your voice is very important to us. So I shut him down from getting mad. I'm just going to be great. I'm just going to be gracious. And, right. and I told the story of, we can't go out, we can't do. And I said, there's tens of thousands of people in this state that can't leave the house. That they're silent because they can't, they're crippled by what's going on. And we can have the argument whether masks work or not. As an artist and a custom painter, I can tell you these cotton ones don't. You need respirators. But and I said, that's another story. I'm not going to get into that. Then I read the law, the actual law, the statute, and this is why I had the lawyers a few days before, because they had the actual statute of what the law was about masks, which is completely illegal to wear a mask in Minnesota. And the government, so I ended it like this. I said, okay, so everyone that has a mask on here, I'm not judging you or anything, but for everyone that's here has a mask on, you should thank these 4 city council members that put this resolution in, because now I don't have to ask these good officers over here to arrest you for a misdemeanor, petty misdemeanor for wearing a mask in public. And then I walked out and the room just erupted, and it was like, I wasn't bombastic. I wasn't being a jerk. None of it. And it was just a matter of, it's how you present it. And
I think that's what it is. I think you're 100% right there, is if you present your argument in a way, that makes it resonates. It's an emotional, resonating argument to people. They understand it. One of the things that I tweeted very early on, and Twitter was very upset. They actually suspended me for 7 days for that tweet. And they told me, if you take it down, we'll let you back on. I was like, I'm not taking it down. I don't care. Yeah. And I was literally just going to be like, I guess I won't have Twitter, which this show would not exist if I would have taken that tweet down. Or I guess technically, no, it probably wouldn't have existed if I had taken the tweet down. But it was It was just a photo of an internment camp in World War II, and I said the government has put us all in these with COVID lockdowns.
Yeah,
that was it, and people lost it. Man, did they get mad? They're like, "That's not even close," and I'm like, "You're locked in your fucking house, dude, and you won't leave because you're a little bitch.
right.
And if you do, a cop's gonna give you a ticket. They're gonna scream at you about whatever. You have no freedom." You have no freedom. You're in an internment camp.
Well,
We just call it America.
And people didn't seem to be able to think critically. So when this all began, we didn't know what was it. I had the idea that, you know, I work with importing stuff from China and stuff. So I have some contacts in China and Korea and that. And it seemed like it was going to be a lot bigger deal over there than it actually was. And when it came here, you know, we really didn't know. And, you know, I was worried about getting sick and dying. I think everyone was at some point. Yeah. And one of the things we did was, even though I couldn't wear the masks, we made them. So my wife started making them because one of her relatives worked in a hospital and says, we can't get masks. Remember the beginning, no one could get any.
Yep. Yeah.
And like, we can't make it. And she's like, well, I'll
make them all in China, and they were keeping them all.
Yeah. So we went, and made, you know, a few hundred masks. My wife made them.
Yeah.
And I had just recently built my website, the one that's scrolling underneath. Thank you very much. But, and I had to figure out how to like take credit card. I'm like, well, this is a perfect way of figuring out how to
do a little art.
Yeah, I do a little art. So
get that graped on.
We made these cool masks, and we put them on there, and I was selling them. And then I was raising money for charity for in vitro. My daughter was just going through some in vitro stuff, and she had a company she was working with. So I raised, you know, I don't know, we sold a few $1,000s worth of masks anyway, and it all ended out in June because by the end of June, there was so many people doing it that it was just not worth it anymore. And we were realizing that this really isn't an ascent. Then I went to Sturgis. So you heard about Sturgis. I was there.
The super spreader.
I was there. And, you know, in our booth, you have 4,000 or 5,000 people a day coming through.
Yeah.
And we have a pretty big setup. Sure. And it was, first of all, it was spectacular because it was the first time I felt free.
Well, you were doing that for your motorcycle business, right?
For the motorcycle business. Okay. And so we were set up at Black Hills Harley Davidson. And it's kind of it was kind of the mega mall of motorcycle parts and accessories.
Yeah, I know.
And it's awesome. I mean, we had 500,000
I'm a
people
huge
there.
motorcycle guy. So
are you? Where you ride?
Yeah. Nothing right now. I actually just sold my last bike that I had 2 years ago. Well, but my father-in-law has built motorcycles basically his entire life. And
cool.
Pretty much always built Harleys or at least on a Harley frame is how he runs it. Yeah, I think he told me, if I remember right, he's got like a 46 in his shop right now. 46
cool.
frame.
Nice.
Like a flathead or something like that.
Yeah, that's an old flathead, old 45 cubic inch flathead. Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah,
anyway,
I like those.
Sorry, derailed.
No, but that's all right. But, you know, so I go to Sturgis and I came back and I realized at that point, I said, either we're all going to die or nothing's going to happen. And what happened was nothing. They were able, right afterward, there was a bad report saying there was like 300,000 cases. That was because of it. And it was even rebuked.
Which they just made up.
They made up. Here's how they did it. They were pinging phones, and anyone that had a phone that was in Sturgis, when they went home from the day after Sturgis ended until like a week later, they counted any COVID case in that county where that person's phone was as it came from Sturgis. Yeah. So you had 300,000 people.
They just made it up.
In the end, it was 35 is what they ended up with. Was 35 cases. And they talked about
did those 35 people die?
But there was a death. There was a guy that died of COVID right after he got back. And so here's the deal. This guy should have been held up as a hero because he had stage 4 cancer. And what he was doing was going and helping people that were in the hospital that were suffering with COVID, because he's like, I don't care if I get it because, you know, I'm done anyway. And
it's being like 85, being like, I'm going to do what I do.
Right. And you know, he was actually a hero and really helped people that were sick and suffering and the families and things like that while being careful. I mean, he didn't spread it or nothing.
Right.
But he ended up dying from it, and he was out there and came back. But no one in his crew got it. Nobody that he knew got it. I mean, that's when I realized, I'm like, this is all a farce. This is all a farce. Then in Minnesota, the flu always kills 8,000 people. It's killed like 28. So, you know, I look at.
Well, obviously,
you know, I can't believe my lying eyes.
I love how when they talk about it and people say, well, like, what's up with the flu deaths? They say, well, masks are working. It's like, okay, what's up with COVID deaths? Well, people aren't wearing enough masks.
Right.
You're like,
everyone's wearing a mask. I mean, believe me,
y'all understand.
I'm a guy that can't, and it's, you know, it's hard. There's places where you just have to.
I wear the mask mainly because, like, well, the way New Mexico works, at least, is you fucking have no choice, because every business,
yeah,
that's what it's like. They made the argument like, oh well, a private business is making you, but they're not.
Yeah,
the private business sign on the front of their business says because of state mandate.
Right. Well, they find the
and
business.
It's not a law. They never passed a law in New Mexico ever.
Minnesota
it's always been little dictatorial governors' edict is what we're still under. She's had it for over a year. No one seems to have any issue with these little tyrannical pieces of shit running around the planet.
Yeah.
Governor Cuomo, Gretchen Whitmer, all these people just killing all these olds. They're like, whatever, you know.
Walz did the same. Our governor bought a $6 million building, like 300,000 square feet or something. And it was an old produce building to house the cadavers from this. And of course, there has been no cadavers. And one of the senators that I'm friends with, you know, she really pushed the issue and said, I want to go tour for that. I want to see what's in there.
Yeah.
You know, and then went in.
Yeah,
she was
what's
like,
going on, man?
It was an empty waste. You know, it's just nothing. And the other thing, so like in Minnesota, in Minnesota, they voted the at least I'll give this to the Republicans in Minnesota in the House, at least they voted 14 times to take the governor's powers away. And the Democrats control the House, so they've been sitting in lockstep.
So it never happens.
But the actual vote that they're taking isn't a vote to take away the powers. It's a vote to discuss taking away the powers so they can have a vote. So they won't even allow the discussion of it. And
I hate government.
This is where, like, think about if we had 10 libertarian leaning Democrats.
Yeah, they would go, let's do it.
They were like, no, we got to have this discussion because we're getting killed out here. Yeah. You know? And I don't know what
because their voters would be all up in their ass. Like, what are you doing? Like, why is this happening? I don't like it, whatever. Holy shit.
So I know it's a long one.
we're gonna shift gears for a minute. I want to cover two more things before I let you go. So, okay, you are in the Twin Cities, and in 2020, that's where it all went just batshit crazy, right?
Yep.
Minneapolis lost their shit, or at least that's where it started. Let's put it that way. Derek Chauvin's trial is about to begin.
Right.
I got to be honest with you, man. I've looked through. I actually watched the entire police their body cam footage of that situation. I've looked through what at least public evidence is available. I've also been able to, at this point now, go through the Minneapolis police training book.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
This dude's gonna walk.
It's
in your city's gonna
be hard. It's gonna be hard to. First of all, I mean the cast has already been set that there's no way he can have a fair trial in this city.
No, it's not possible.
And it's not possible. And
I don't think he can have a fair trial anywhere on earth. Honestly.
That's my thing too. I mean, you'd have to bring him somewhere into Rwanda in the hills, and explain to them.
It's all these people that are like, I don't even know what Chauvin is.
Yeah, here's a person. They might have done something, they might have not. You're going to tell us what you think. Yeah. You know, but you know, I watched it all too. And Minneapolis police have had a bad rap for a lot of reasons. I mean, back in the 80s when I was in college, you know, the joke was, how many Minneapolis police officers does it take to throw a U of M student down a flight of stairs? And the answer was none. He fell.
Yeah, of
you
course.
Know, but so I mean, this isn't new, but at the same time,
I think that works with most police officers.
Yeah, I think at you know, I'm not a police hater. I just I call them like I see it. And this one here was a bad thing, and the reaction to it, the fact that so what happened here, and I watched it because being politically involved here for the last like 10, 12 years and kind of knowing how the system works, when you've got people rioting in the streets that are the people that you're supposed to be protecting, but they're also your people that are voting for you, and this is your main base,
Right.
you don't know what to do. And that's what happened. The mayor, the governor, paralyzed. They were paralyzed. Like, we
They
can't,
just panicked.
we
They
can't, what,
panicked.
honestly, what they should have done, I mean, first night should have, and I don't like the idea of this, but this is what needed to have happened to stop this craziness. You had to get the National Guard or all of the state patrol in there and just start getting in there and stopping people and just say, sorry. And you know what? Heads are going to get busted and it's going to be a problem.
You know what? I'm not in disagreement. I actually made the argument that if Trump would have been for real, he would have done it himself. He would have stepped in and said, this is not going to be acceptable.
I mean, this was destruction of, I mean, it still looks like Baghdad 1992 down there. I mean, it's absolutely terrible.
If you ask the liberals, everything's fine.
No, I know, because everything's boarded up, and then people have painted pretty pictures of you know, history on there. But
were you down there graffiti and stuff?
I thought about it. But then I'm like,
probably should have done it.
Like the way the crime went up, and you know, this is
when I set up my city, Ken, you're gonna do the sign for when you come into the city that says Libertas.
Yes.
And by the way, thank you, Dave Smith, for giving me that name, Libertas. I appreciate it. Anyway, great. You were saying, okay, about all this going on.
Well, it was allowed to continue way longer than it did. And in 1987, the Twins won the World Series, and the same thing happened downtown Minneapolis. And I was down there for that. I was riding around the back of a truck yelling and screaming and stuff like that and hooping it up, and stuff was getting broken. As soon as I saw him set fire to a police car and flip it over, I'm like, let's turn this bus around. I don't want to be part of this now. You know, it's fun when we're just running around the streets and, you know, throwing bottles and stuff like that. That's, you know, that's
things that you sweep up in the morning.
Yeah, you know, it's dumb stuff you do when you're 19. But so there's a history of that there, but it just got it was allowed to get completely out of hand. There's still a block in Minneapolis where it's a no-go zone where that all happened.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Finally,
CNN doesn't talk about it.
No, they don't. In the, you know, they also don't talk about half the police force. Well, not half, but a ton of the police took early retirement, quit, left. Minneapolis. Now, you guys said something too. This is an interesting thing. People are moving out of Minneapolis, but people are moving back in just as quickly. And the housing market there is hot. And you'd think it would be like the values will drop down, but a lot of people are moving out, but a lot of people are moving in. So I think what's happening is you're seeing kind of what happened in Detroit, where the people with money are moving out. There are different people with money moving in, and the complexion of the city is going to change. And I don't mean physical color complexion, but I mean the complexion of the populace. And I think it's going to go further and further left, because kind of like the Free State Project trying to do it in New Hampshire. This would be the opposite of that. What's happening in Minneapolis? It's a vacuum sucking in everybody.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about the Free State Project, and when it first started, I didn't know about it until that long ago, and I started looking into it. But you can actually track it. Mm-hmm. It started to go more and more left as it went, and so a lot of people are like, "No, but they have this great thing, this libertarian movement in New Hampshire," and I'm like, "It's not."
It's not, and it everything tends to track.
It started that way, but it just went. It's man, it's going nutty. So what my question was Derek Chauvin's trial has just begun. I know Minneapolis has spent like a couple of $1 million now on security fencing around the whole situation. Mm-hmm. They've got it. I mean, they're trying to set this bitch up around that courthouse like Washington, D.C., around the Capitol building, because they're all a bunch of cowards, in my opinion, but whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think happens? And if it doesn't go the way they want it to go, which I honestly don't think it will. I literally believe this guy, even if they convict him on anything, the only thing I can see that maybe is like murder 3. They might get him on that one, and that shit's getting overturned in appeals too, also. Yeah. But point being is maybe they get him on that. These people are going to try to burn this bitch to the ground.
I don't think there's a way he doesn't get convicted. I think that this trial, I think this trial is bought and paid for in a way that I don't see how you can have an impartial person on that jury. Not
I don't either.
not what and they tried to move it to outstate, which would have been smarter.
Oh, and they never would have let me on that jury.
But now, if they moved it to outstate, I wouldn't have been on there either, because I talked nullification right away.
Oh, I'm sure I'm on I'm sure I'm on a list now.
Yeah, I am too.
They let me on a jury once; they'll never do it again.
Yeah, they tried to let me on. I just told them what I thought, and then they let me off. But
yeah.
So this is kind of my, and predictions are worthless. So let's take this with a grain of salt. But I think that I don't see a path that he doesn't get convicted of something.
Yeah, but it's going to get overturned in appeals.
In appeals overturned later on, he'll be somewhere else. I think they'll put him in a prison.
I don't think it'll matter though. Even in appeals, like if they appeal it, which he will, obviously, and he'll win the appeal because they just don't have it, and then man.
Well, but here's what I'm going with the immediate thing before the appeals. So if he loses, there's going to be people in the streets. If he wins, there's going to be people in the streets. So it's just a matter.
You guys are burnt no matter what.
I think so. And it's kind of, I use that same thing. I mean, the Twins won the World Series and they burned the place down. And it was. I think that what happened last summer was a combination of just being so pent up with COVID and lockdowns, because it was really, really harsh for a while. He shut everything down.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
I think you had it a lot worse than I had it. Honestly.
Yeah, we had it. He shut down restaurants, bars, completely. I mean, there was you can't.
Well, I live in a very red county.
Okay.
And so even though our mayor's a coward, and I will say that, and I have to him, and our city council and county commissioners are cowards, and I've said that to them. They're not. I'm not in a. The majority of them are like our sheriff was like, I'm not enforcing this.
Yeah, we had a good sheriff that said the same thing right in the beginning.
He's I'm not. So we got lucky in that regard. Our police chief and our sheriff were like, "Nah,
support him." The sheriff is one of the most important people in the county.
Me and the sheriff are not on good terms.
Oh boy,
I might actually challenge him, honestly.
Well, there you go.
Like for his job, I literally might. I've been considering it.
Why not?
Well, we can talk about that post show, but anyway, let's move on. Okay, we got the Derek Chauvin thing down. Now, I did promise the guests we were going to talk cars, and you like old muscle cars. I love old muscle cars. Now, why don't you tell all the guests why your favorite old muscle car is a '72 Chevelle with the 454 Super Sport engine? Let's do that.
Well, I can show you a picture. So let me see. This is video. So that's me. This is my old Cutlass.
Yeah, but that's not your favorite car. Obviously, I just told you what your favorite car is.
No,
now you have to explain to them why. No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
For real. Where are you at? What's your years and what do you?
So favorite car, so like there's bucket list favorite car, and that'd be a 1932, 33 Duesenberg model SSJ supercharged. I mean that's $3 million car. But
yeah,
I'm actually building the car so this picture that I just showed you, this was my 71 Cutlass I had for 20 years. And when the recession hit, I got wound up in
08.
Yeah, in 08, I got wound up in problems with housing, and we were upside down in our house, and I sold it, and we sold the cars, and we sold everything, and moved and rented a shit little house, and did that for a while. So that's another story. But so I had to get rid of that car, and
which means he has to come back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I will. If we can think about something to talk about, we seem to be having a lot of lag. So right now I'm building. I found another one, and it's almost exactly the same as the car I had, and I'm building it the way I wanted to, but never had money to. So it's I'm building a 72 Cutlass Supreme. It's got a 455 rocket out of a 69 Delta 88 that I just parted out, and 411 posi gears in back, and I'm running a 4-speed overdrive. And it should be I got to do some cam work, a little bit of head work to it. And I'm trying to get a 450 horse to the ground because you said Chevelle, my best friend, we were the two motorheads in art school. It's pretty funny. He has a 70 Chevelle because he got the bug a couple of years ago and said, I want to drive an old car again. So he'd started commuting to work. He works at 3M, and he started commuting there in a 70 Chevelle. big block 396 car.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I had to, his is a 396. I had to get the 455
Well, of
because
course. I mean,
he can't be.
obviously.
So, so he put a new transmission in his because then he's like, oh, I need the overdrive, which then he spun a cam bearing after doing that. So then he pulled that motor, I had to build that motor. So then I'm like, all right, well, I got to get better gears in the back now. So we've got this one up, so we just keep going. He's another artist and graphic designer too. But
That's sick. There's
this car guy artists, and this is the kind of stuff that I've always done, and I've stayed in that. And it's a culture I love. I love cars, and I love the feeling of big old boats. Like I said, I mean, I drive a 2001 Lincoln Town Car. Said before, in the winter. Well, in the summertime, I drive a 1997 Town Car, the Black Cloud. It's all black. Nice. It's black interior. There's no vinyl top.
Black on black on black.
Big old white walls on that sumbitch. And my dad bought it new in 1997, and it's been in Arizona.
Score, you're driving your dad's car? That's awesome.
So it's like I can keep this in the family and then hopefully give it to my son or my daughter, in 20 years when I'm done with it. Yeah. But, I really dig that. And I'm building my Cutlass. Of course, I got a motorcycle. I got a Kawasaki Vulcan 2000 cc.
Nice.
It's a beast. It's painted like a circus wagon. It's all metal flake, and I got the pinup girl Betty Page on one side and a tiki guy with smoking a cigar and flames on the other side. And it's
my last bike was a '88 Honda Shadow cut pipe.
Nice.
Those are nice bikes. Completely tore down. It was 100% like just stripped. Just strip it down as close as you can get it. And it was. I'm not a big guy, so a small bike is nice, and it was around town, and it was a super fun bike. I had a Honda 400 for a while, little Honda 400. Yeah, those are fun.
I did the same thing
around town.
Oh, for around town, it was awesome, and it was a quick little bike too, because I took if it didn't need it to run, I took it off. So I mean, I cut the fender off the back, and I lowered it with the shocks. I moved the shocks back 2 inches.
That thing to nothing.
I stripped it down to nothing. So it was like wires were just hanging out.
That's awesome.
And I shaved like 50, 60 pounds off of it. It was already a little light bike, and I used to tear up town with that. And then I had XS 650s. I had about 7 of those old Yamaha XS 650s, and then I had a Suzuki. Oh God, I crashed it too. It was the only bike I wiped out on. It's 650. Just the XV or SV 650 Suzuki.
SVC. Okay, yeah.
Awesome bike. That thing was awesome. And I changed the oil, and I'm driving around the block just to make sure we don't get any leaks. And I stop over, and there's my neighbor sitting on the driveway with a beer. And I'm waving to him. We talk for a minute. So I go to take off, and I'm like, I'm gonna do a burnout. No, I'm gonna do a wheelie. I'm gonna do a burnout. I'm gonna do it. And I ended up just going down the road and just piling into the road. Yeah, and that was 8 weeks of hell.
Dude.
But you do play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's me on that.
Exactly, man.
And my wife's like, no more.
This is why I don't ride dirt bikes now.
Oh yeah. I can't.
Because I learned like you're too old and too stupid.
Right.
Because you get on a dirt bike for whatever reason, you think you're 15 and you're not.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And on my bike,
no, I can totally clear that, but you can't.
And I've never been good at dirt bikes, so that's good. But for me, it's always how sideways can I get laying over before I high side and flip over. So I just love that feeling of just dirt tracking it. So like on this Vulcan I've got now, I mean the back tire is a 240/16. It's about 8 inches wide. This is a monster tire. Yeah. And whenever I get that on a dirt road, man, I'm sideways as hell, my foot down, and just it's an 800-pound bike. So it slides around like a Lincoln Town Car. And I'm like, I get this.
Awesome.
But it's fun. Awesome. And it tops out pretty good. In a professional driver on a closed course one day. I had it at 142 miles an hour. And that was screaming for a cruiser. I mean, it's just a beast. I mean, no one knows how fast they are, and they're quick. It was bike of the year. And they said, like, even when they do like now the top 10 fastest bikes of the 20th century, it's always in there somewhere because it goes 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds.
It's 3.81.
Yeah, 3.81. I think you're right.
Yeah. So it's a very fast bike.
And I've got 57,000 miles on it. And I've had to do a couple of really, really minor things.
Luckily you haven't actually like done anything or rode it at all, so that's good. 57,000.
I did. It's just a really dependable vehicle, and I just
something that once in a while on the weekends.
Yeah, So once in a while I take it out. But you know,
Ken,
also it's been good, man.
We're gonna drop this thing off here for
Already?
the audience.
Did we just
Yeah,
get started, man? It's only been 1 hour and a half.
I know. Well, I'm not Joe Rogan, man. We're gonna drop this off here. This has been a super good time. You all see it. madkstudio.com. You definitely need to click on that, buy some shit, because I mean he's got something to sell you. I'm sure of it, and it's probably going to be awesome no matter what it is. Follow him on Twitter. That's down there somewhere. I don't even know what it is, but it's also, everything's in the description. Ken, this has been a super fun time, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
This has been great. I really enjoy it. We'll have to do it again sometime. Absolutely.
Oh, of course, absolutely.